In this lesson, we'll continue our review of Writing Test 9, Section 2. We're now on the fourth and final passage, Digging Up Cities. In 2010, as a construction crew began to tear up sidewalks in New York City's South Street Seaport to replace a water pipe, Alyssa Lura and her team watched eagerly, picks and brushes in hand. Lura, an urban archaeologist, studies the history of cities. Question 34, the writer is considering revising the underlined portion to the following. So considering adding that Lura, an urban archaeologist, studies the history of cities by excavating artifacts that have accumulated over centuries of land development. Should the writer make the revision here? Let's read a little bit further here. Any New York City construction project using municipal funds are required to consider whether historical artifacts will be affected during the construction, and if that possibility exists or is possible, an urban archaeologist must be consulted. So here, it's really, I think, important to explain what exactly an urban archaeologist does. Not just studies the history of cities, but how specifically, especially in this context, because they're tearing up a sidewalk to replace a pipe, by excavating artifacts that have been accumulated over centuries of land development. And then it goes on to say that any project needs to be given this permit to get permission. So this looks good here to add it. Let's take a look at the two yeses. Yes, because it helps set up the rest of the passage by explaining what urban archaeologists do. This looks good. Or yes, because it identifies the characteristics that make particular cities worthy of archaeology study. It's not the characteristics, it just really explains what specifically this profession does. So this one is A. And I read this before. Any New York City construction project using municipal funds are required. This is subject-verb agreement. What's required? Think about it. Look for space between the subject and the verb. Are required. It's a project. Any New York City construction project using municipal funds. All right, so this is just a participial clause, but the subject here is the project. The project, any project, right, is required. It's got to be present. It has to be singular. And so 35 is going to be is to consider whether artifacts will be affected during construction, and if that possibility exists or is possible. Right away we see exists or is possible. A possibility is possible. Certainly redundant. Why do we need possible twice? We just need exists, and the answer is D for that one. An urban archaeologist must be consulted. Since the South Street Seaport area was bustling commercial center for early colonists, Lura anticipated that a rich history lay beneath the pavement. It is our job to document and recover that history before it's lost. As the work continued, therefore, the team faced obstacles. Field work in the city has to be done intermittently. The construction crew had to proceed one block at a time to avoid interrupting traffic, and the archaeology team's work was periodically halted by stormy weather and the discovery of toxic materials underground. So this is the transition question, this word, as the work continued. So we know this work is established, but it seems here there are lots of obstacles, all these barriers that had to be done on and off, and to proceed very, very cautiously, one block at a time, the weather. So we need contrast here. So even though the work is proceeding, there are some barriers. It's not meanwhile or similarly. It's not thus. It's just though, just contrast for this one. And 38 was periodically halted, by stormy weather. We had a question like this in the last video. There's no punctuation here. Halted by stormy weather. And so this one, it would just be D, right? We don't need any punctuation. And I'll do this one last question for 39. Moreover, as archaeologists underground attempted to relay information to those at the surface, they had to contend with the noise of construction vehicles, car horns, and pedestrians noise on the busy New York street. So we've seen these before. This is parallel construction. We're listing these nouns here with the noise of construction, vehicles, that's a noun, car horns, and then we have a possessive. This is not consistent. We just want another noun to be parallel, and it's not the noise of, right? Why do we want a prepositional phrase? We just want the noun. It's not that of. It's just pedestrian. It's just the noun to be parallel with vehicles and car horns.